So, good afternoon or good evening or good morning, depending on where you are, and thanks for joining me today. This is Roaming Prepper, and today I got a real zinger for you because I read an article and it came from ZeroHedge saying that the UN was endorsing adults having intimate relations with underage children. But is that true? Because let's face it, there's a lot of spin and some people may interpret it differently. Well, I actually found on the UN AIDS website the actual article, the actual paper written by the UN person. So let's talk about this one because this one's kind of concerning. I'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. I'm taking a break from work. I'm waiting for some phone calls. I figured I would put something fun together for us to talk about while I was waiting for the phone call. So back to my original introduction. So in ZeroHedge, one of my viewers passed this to me, said that the UN was just released a report saying that sexual intimacy between an adult and someone under the age of consent, or 18, if you will, here in the States and in Canada, is okay, even if it's not legal. And, you know, it kind of sounded, the way it was worded in the article, it kind of sounded like the UN was endorsing not having age of consent laws. Just, you know, whatever adult goes finds whatever underage kid. So I decided to look into it. Now, the original ZeroHedge article, and I encourage you to read it, it's also on Fox News. So again, those are leaning a little to the right, granted. Both show the same thing, that the verbiage is indicative of, well, certain people under the age of consent by law may be mature enough to make these kind of decisions, and therefore we shouldn't be punishing people for this situation. Now, UNICEF, on the other hand, and I went to the UNICEF website and looked at their view, was completely the opposite. They're saying, no, a lot of adults will manipulate or coerce, whether by threat or by suggestion, to get underage or immature individuals to consent to acts. And that this could probably open the door to a bunch of mess. So I wanted to get some context. So I actually went to the article, and it's, if you go to UNAID, UNAID.org, I believe is the actual website, and it gives you the article, and then under Principle 16, so Principle 1.6 in the paper, and you have to click around to find it. I lost it. Bear with me here. Okay, it says the consensual sexual conduct. Of course, I hit the page and now it disappeared on me. So bear with me just a second while I bring it back. So consensual sexual conduct. And now it introduces the chapter just before it, by saying, well, if an underage kid is being a prostitute, we're kind of being too harsh on the prostitutes and not addressing the pimp, if you will, or the cartel or whatever organization is encouraging this young individual to engage in sex. And yeah, I can see where that argument could be made, like you're punishing 14-year-old hookers. Why are you not throwing the men who are hiring the hookers in jail, and then go find the pimp and throw him in jail too, or her? But this is Principle 16, and I'm going to show it to you here. Principle 16, sorry about that. And I'll read it out loud to you because it may be backwards on my computer. Consensual sexual conduct, irrespective of the type of sexual activity, so whatever sexual activity is going to go on, not just sex, The sex, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression of the people involved in or their marital status may not be criminalized in any circumstances. Consensual same-sex as well as consensual different-sex sexual relations or consensual sexual relations with or between trans, and basically it's explaining LGBT adults should have private rights, which, okay, fine. It should not be criminalized. But then it says, with respect to the enforcement of criminal law, any prescribed minimum age of consent to sex must be applied in a non-discriminatory manner. Enforcement may not be linked to the sex, gender of participants or age of consent to marriage. Moreover, sexual conduct involving persons below the domestically prescribed minimum age of consent, the law, whatever country it is, may be consensual in fact, if not in law. In this context, the enforcement of criminal law should reflect the rights and capacity of persons under 18 to make decisions about engaging in consensual sexual conduct and their right to be heard in matters concerning them. Pursuant to their evolving capacities and progressive autonomy, persons under 18 years of age should participate in decisions affecting them with due regard to their age, maturity, and best interests, and with a specific attention to non-discrimination guarantees. Now, where they were, it seems, and I've read a few other chapters where it seems they were trying to go, or what they were originally alluding to is that, well, if an older person has sex with a younger person of a different gender, or, a different sex, or male with a young female, you shouldn't prosecute them any differently than if it was a male and a young male, right? Okay, so I see the even application of law. What bothers me is any prescribed minimum age of consent to sex must be applied in a non-discriminatory manner. Well, who decides that? Because, in one, even in the U.S., in one state, it may be 16 or 17, so long as the lover is within 3 or 4 years of the age of the younger person, which is the Romeo and Juliet law. So basically, you're not throwing an 18-year-old in prison for falling in love and having relations with a 16-year-old, because they're kind of close in age. It's a technicality. They're both high school kids, right? And again, that's the gist of the Romeo and Juliet law. But sexual conduct involving persons below the domestically prescribed minimum age of consent to sex may be consensual in fact, if not in law. So that I don't like. That's concerning, because what it's saying is, well, if the underage person consented, then even though they're breaking the law, should you really be punishing them? Now, I'm stretching here and guessing that they're saying, oh, well, if an underage woman in certain countries has sex with an older man, they would very often flog the female and not the male, right? Especially in Sharia law and nations that practice the more traditional laws. But the way it's worded basically says, well, we should enforce criminal law should reflect the rights and capacity of the person under 18. So if a very physically mature 14-year-old who knows how to speak says, well, no, I consented to have relations with a 45-year-old dude, or vice versa, a 14-year-old boy and a 45-year-old woman, that should be kind of looked at differently. I don't know what to say to that. This really blows my mind. And then it goes on, Principle 17, you guys are going to love this one, sex work. All right, let's read sex work. The exchange of sexual services between consenting adults for money, goods, or services, and communication with another about, advertising for, or sharing premises for the purpose of exchanging sexual services between consenting adults for food, money, goods, services, whether in a public or private place, may not be criminalized absent coercion, force, abuse, or of authority or fraud. Well, when in God's name is prostitution not typically the result of coercion, force, abuse, or authority or fraud? I mean, granted, there are some legal brothels like in Vegas, apparently. I've heard of them. I've never been to one, but I would assume, they're licensed in this, like, here's your brothel, ta-da, and these are all adults who go and do things. But again, the way it's worded, Well, if you're already coercing the kid, if the cop shows up and says, are you being coerced? The young kid, the young boy or girl is going to say no because he's afraid of the pimp, right? So the kid's always going to say it was consensual because they don't want to get killed by the mafia guy or the cartel or whoever the hell's running the prostitution ring. So this is the exact opposite of what UNICEF is saying, which is saying that underage people under the typical age of consent is the way they phrase it, 16 to 18, and certainly below 14, depending on the nation, is one of the main drivers of prostitution and the victimization of children, and how this could come out. And they hit it, of course, between the right of people to have gender identity and gender expression, and where else did they put it? And the right to have an abortion, or whether you agree or disagree with abortion, right? That's besides the point. That's a legal argument up here and down here. And then they squish this in between, so you're all hung up on the abortion and the gender rights, and you don't read the paragraph in the middle. I thought it was bull. I thought it was like, man, no, ZeroHedge went off the deep end. No, they did not. They did not. So yeah, I'm reading this, and by the way, I only paraphrased it earlier. Okay, it is unaids.org. Let me see if I can give you guys it's a terrible view. I'm sorry. unaids.org. So there it is, folks. There it is. Oh, and it was launched on Women's Day, because that makes it better. While biological men are taking the trophies away from women athletes all over the U.S., that's when they're going to introduce this. The way it's worded, if I were a defense attorney, I could have a field day there. Oh, yeah, he had sex with, 10 9-year-old girls, but, they consented. So, I mean, and they're mature for their age. This is the kind of stuff I read that makes you want to have a stroke. Seriously. I don't know what to say. 6 months from now, they may ban my channel because I brought this up, but consenting adults is one thing. Teenagers is another, and I get the Romeo and Juliet law. 16, an 18-year-old and a 16-year-old hookup. Do you really want to throw the 18-year-old in jail for rape? I mean, they're two stupid kids, but this opens a Pandora's box of victimization, rape, abuse, trafficking. Are you being trafficked? No, I'm going consensually. Of course they're going to say they're going consensually, because the cartel guy is going to kill them if they don't. I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, so it was true. What you see on ZeroHedge and Fox News, the way it's worded, whether it's the intent or not, the original intent as you start reading is equal rights, not overly prosecuting underage prostitutes because they're usually victims. I get that. But when you read the verbiage, that opens a whole Pandora's box of other things that can happen. And I don't even know what to say to that. This is no longer a question of consenting adults. And you notice that the age of consent and the right to exchange sex for goods and services consensually were one right behind the other. You notice that, right? We're not talking about grown-ass adults who are like making deals on the side. You just open a whole Pandora's box of this. I don't even know how to compute this. So I encourage all of you, I showed you the website, usaids.org. Go look at it, make your own conclusion. Guys, this is absolutely over the top. I don't even know how to compute that. Well, I don't know. Anyway, I'll leave it at that, folks. I'll leave you all to figure out what you think of that. Until next time, God bless, Godspeed, and yes, ZeroHedge was not so far off the right or the rails as I thought they were. They were pretty damn close in what they were saying. I will talk to you all later. Watch your babies. Take care of your children. Take care of your people. Be good. Have a good night.